Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 2,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
The Minnesota Vikings just made a move that has NFL insiders absolutely buzzing. And if you know where to look, the breadcrumbs are leading straight to one controversial quarterback who might be coming out of retirement. We're talking about Derek Carr, folks, and the evidence is starting to pile up in ways that are absolutely impossible to ignore. What just went down in Minnesota has conspiracy theorists putting on their detective hats. And honestly, after diving deep into this situation, you might want to grab yours too because this rabbit hole goes deep. Let's set the scene. The Vikings just convinced their assistant offensive coordinator Jordan Traylor to turn down what should have been an absolute no-brainer career move. The Las Vegas Raiders came calling with a shiny upgrade, offering Traylor the quarterback coach position, a clear step up the coaching ladder that typically leads straight to offensive coordinator gigs and eventually head coaching opportunities. The Raiders have the #1 overall pick, Fernando Mendoza, sitting right there waiting to be molded. They just hired Quinn Kubiak, who already has history with Traylor from their New Orleans days together. This was the kind of opportunity young coaches dream about, the kind that launches careers into the stratosphere. But Traylor said no. He's staying in Minnesota as the assistant offensive coordinator. A lateral move at best, possibly even a step backward when you consider what he's passing up. And that's where things get absolutely fascinating, because when you start pulling on this thread, the entire sweater begins to unravel and reveal something potentially massive brewing in Vikings territory. Here's what most people don't know. Jordan Traylor didn't just work with Derek Carr in New Orleans. They were absolutely joined at the hip. We're talking about the kind of relationship where they held double practice sessions daily, grinding through film, perfecting routes, building chemistry that goes way beyond typical coach-player dynamics. Sound familiar? It should, because that's exactly what Grant Udinski did with Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy in Minnesota last season, staying after practice, being the right-hand man, the guy quarterbacks trust implicitly. Traylor was that guy for Derek Carr with the Saints, and now he's mysteriously deciding to stay in Minnesota despite better opportunities elsewhere. Let's connect more dots because this story gets even juicier. Derek Carr has made it crystal clear that if he's coming out of retirement, it's only for a legitimate Super Bowl contender. The man isn't interested in a farewell tour or a paycheck. He wants a ring, and he's going to be selective about where he lands. Now ask yourself this question and really think about it. Where in the NFL right now offers a better situation for a veteran quarterback looking to win immediately than the Minnesota Vikings? Consider what Minnesota brings to the table. They have a top-5 defense that's only getting better under Brian Flores, a defensive mastermind who has offenses absolutely terrified. They have the best wide receiver in the entire league in Justin Jefferson, a generational talent who makes quarterbacks look better than they actually are. They have bookend tackles protecting the pocket, a solid infrastructure, and an offensive play caller in Kevin O'Connell, who, despite having his critics, is still easily a top 15 mind in the league. The NFC is wide open right now, more competitive and unpredictable than it's been in years, which means a wild card team absolutely can make a deep playoff run. For Derek Carr, looking at the landscape of teams needing quarterbacks, there simply isn't a better situation available. But wait, there's more. The connections between Derek Carr and the Vikings organization run even deeper than just Jordan Traylor. Frank Smith, Minnesota's assistant head coach, was the tight ends coach for the Las Vegas Raiders from 2018 to 2020. Who was slinging passes for the Raiders during that exact time frame? You guessed it, Derek Carr. So now we're looking at relationships with the assistant offensive coordinator and the assistant head coach, two crucial voices in that building who would be advocating hard for bringing in a quarterback they know, trust, and have succeeded with before. And if that doesn't blow your mind enough, here's an absolutely wild piece of trivia that sounds like it came straight out of a Hollywood script. 12 years ago this week, during the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis, a young quarterback from Fresno State named Derek Carr sat down for interviews with various NFL personnel. One of those interviewers was a former San Diego State quarterback who was working his way up the coaching ranks. That interviewer was Kevin O'Connell, now the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. These two have history that goes back over a decade, that old Mountain West Conference rivalry connection that creates bonds in football. You think they haven't stayed in touch over the years? You think O'Connell doesn't remember what he saw in that interview room all those years ago? Now let's talk about what Derek Carr would actually bring to Minnesota on the field, because this isn't just about connections and relationships. This is about football, about winning games, about potentially competing for championships. Derek Carr, despite all the criticism and slander he's received over his career, checks almost every single box the Vikings would want in a veteran quarterback acquisition. First, he's affordable. Assuming Minnesota would tear up his existing contract with New Orleans and negotiate a team-friendly deal, we're probably talking about a one-year contract in the $4 to $5 million range. Maybe even less, if Carr is truly motivated by winning a Super Bowl rather than maximizing his earnings. That's pocket change in today's NFL quarterback market, an absolute bargain for someone with his experience and track record. The Vikings could bring in Carr without hamstringing their salary cap, leaving room to make other moves and build a complete roster. Second, and this is crucial, Derek Carr provides both an incredibly high floor and a respectable ceiling. The floor aspect is what makes this so appealing. Carr has never been a bottom-tier quarterback in this league. Even during his worst seasons, he's been serviceable, someone who won't actively lose you games through catastrophic mistakes. He's been a top 12, top 15 quarterback for significant stretches of his career, which might not sound sexy, but is exactly what winning teams need. You don't always need Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen to win a Super Bowl. Sometimes you just need someone competent who won't turn the ball over at crucial moments, someone who can manage games and make plays when opportunities present themselves. But the ceiling is what gets really interesting. People forget that Derek Carr has had genuinely elite stretches in his career. Go back to 2015 when he threw 32 touchdowns against just 13 interceptions, leading Oakland to 12 wins before a devastating injury ended their playoff hopes. The following year, 2016, he was even better with 28 touchdowns and only 6 interceptions, playing at a Pro Bowl level. That was a decade ago, sure, but it shows the capability is there, the talent exists. More recently, just 2 years ago in 2023, Derek Carr had people talking about the Saints as the greatest show on turf reincarnated. Remember those first 2 games? They absolutely demolished the Carolina Panthers, then went to Dallas and destroyed the Cowboys' defense in prime time. Carr was slinging the football downfield to Rashid Shaheed, connecting with Chris Olave, looking like a quarterback who still had plenty of elite football left in his arm. He finished that season 5-5 as a starter with 15 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, respectable numbers with a Saints team that had significant issues beyond just quarterback play. Schematically, Derek Carr is actually a near-perfect fit for what Kevin O'Connell wants to do offensively. Carr has always been one of the best deep ball throwers in the National Football League, someone who isn't afraid to let it rip downfield and take shots. He excels throwing over the middle of the field, hitting those intermediate crossers and seam routes that are staples of modern NFL offenses. Pair that skill set with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson when healthy, and you've got the ingredients for an explosive passing attack. The Vikings went 9-8 last season with legitimately horrible quarterback play at times. Imagine what they could do with someone like Derek Carr operating that offense with all those weapons at his disposal. The real question becomes whether Derek Carr views Minnesota as a legitimate Super Bowl contender, because he's been adamant that he'll only return from retirement for a team that can win it all. From where we're sitting, the answer should be an emphatic yes. The Vikings are absolutely positioned to compete for a championship next season. With Brian Flores returning to coordinate that defense, they'll undoubtedly be a top 5 unit again, maybe even better. The offense has all the pieces in place. The NFC is wide open without any truly dominant powerhouse. If you can get into the playoffs, anything can happen, and the Vikings, with competent quarterback play, would be a serious threat to reach the Super Bowl. Compare Minnesota's situation to every other team in the league that needs a quarterback right now, and it's honestly not even close. The Raiders are rebuilding with a rookie. The Giants are a dumpster fire. The Titans are years away from contention. The Saints, Carr's former team, are in salary cap hell. Where else would he go that offers this combination of elite weapons, strong defense, good coaching, and realistic championship aspirations? Minnesota is the obvious choice if winning is truly his priority. Now let's talk brass tacks about what it would actually take to acquire Derek Carr from the New Orleans Saints. His rights currently belong to New Orleans, meaning Minnesota would need to work out some kind of compensation. The good news is the Saints have absolutely zero leverage in this situation. Carr has retired. They're desperate to clear his contract off their books to deal with their salary cap nightmare, and they probably want to do right by him after everything he did for their organization. We're talking about a 7th-round pick at most, maybe a 6th-rounder that comes back with a 7th in one of those classic NFL draft pick swaps. That's essentially nothing, a throwaway pick for a potential starting quarterback. Carr would almost certainly need to tear up his existing contract, which has him on the books for $35 million, an absurd number that no team would pay at this stage. Instead, expect something team-friendly, that 1-year, $4 to $5 million deal, maybe even cheaper if Carr is truly motivated by winning rather than money. At that price point, with that little draft capital investment required, Derek Carr becomes an absolute no-brainer move for Minnesota to make. The risk is minimal, the upside is significant, and the fit makes too much sense to ignore. Let's project what a Derek Carr-led Vikings team might look like next season in terms of wins and losses. The floor is probably 9 wins, which was what they managed last year with significantly worse quarterback play and arguably a tougher schedule. But realistically, with Carr under center, this team should be looking at 11 or 12 wins, potentially winning the NFC North and securing a high playoff seed. That's not wild speculation. That's just acknowledging that moving from bottom-tier quarterback play to solid veteran leadership at the position is worth 2 to 3 wins minimum in the NFL. Add in the connections, the familiarity, the motivation Carr would bring, and you're looking at a team that could absolutely make noise in January and February. Of course, we need to address the elephant in the room, the other veteran quarterback whose name keeps getting mentioned in connection with Minnesota, Kirk Cousins. The Atlanta Falcons confirmed this week that they'll be releasing Cousins on the first day of the league year, making him a free agent who could theoretically return to the team he spent 6 seasons with. The Kirk Cousins rumors are already starting to swirl, and they're going to be absolutely insufferable throughout this entire offseason, driving Vikings fans and analysts completely insane with speculation and hot takes. But here's the reality that needs to be said loudly and clearly. Kirk Cousins makes 0 sense for Minnesota unless J.J. McCarthy is the unquestioned starter, and Cousins is coming in purely as a backup mentor. Even then, Cousins brings too much noise, too much baggage, too much drama. Imagine McCarthy struggling through a couple of bad games while Kirk is standing on the sideline. The fans at US Bank Stadium would be chanting Kirk's name. The media would be demanding the change. The pressure would be unbearable. Cousins is too noisy of a backup for this situation. And as a starter? Absolutely not. The Vikings couldn't win with Kirk Cousins in his absolute prime when he was younger, healthier, and at his peak performance level. Why would anyone think they can win with 38-year-old Kirk Cousins coming off an Achilles tear at 37? That's one of the most devastating injuries a quarterback can suffer at that age, and while Cousins played decent football last year in Atlanta, he's clearly diminished from what he once was. Bringing him back would be limiting what this team can accomplish, probably capping their ceiling at 10 wins and a first-round playoff exit. That's not good enough. Not with this roster, not with this window. Derek Carr has a bigger arm than Cousins at this stage of their careers. He's a couple years younger. He has better football ahead of him still to be played. Schematically, he's a superior fit for what Kevin O'Connell wants to do offensively. He brings connections throughout the coaching staff that would ease his transition and integration into the system. And perhaps most importantly, he provides something this Vikings team desperately needs right now at the quarterback position: maturity. Experience. A genuine grown-up who has been there and done that, who won't be overwhelmed by the moment, who can walk into that locker room and command respect immediately. That's what's missing in Minnesota right now. J.J. McCarthy is young, inexperienced. coming off injury, and has legitimate questions about his accuracy, his mechanics, his ability to stay healthy, and his overall readiness to be a starting NFL quarterback. Can he develop? Sure. Can he improve? Absolutely. Can he eventually become the long-term answer? Maybe. But right now, in this moment, the Vikings need someone who checks all those veteran boxes already, someone who doesn't need time to develop or prove themselves, someone who can step in day one and lead a Super Bowl contender. The breadcrumbs are there if you're willing to follow them. Jordan Traylor mysteriously staying in Minnesota despite better opportunities elsewhere. The deep connections between Traylor and Carr from their New Orleans days. Frank Smith's history with Carr in Las Vegas. Kevin O'Connell's relationship with Carr dating back over a decade to the scouting combine, the affordable contract situation, the schematic fit, the roster quality, the championship window. Everything is lining up in a way that seems almost too perfect to be coincidental. Could this all be reading too much into a coaching decision? Sure. It's possible. Maybe Traylor just really loves working with O'Connell and wants to stay in Minnesota regardless of who's playing quarterback. Maybe Derek Carr decides he's happy in retirement and has no interest in returning to football. Maybe the Vikings have a completely different plan at quarterback that nobody has considered yet. But when you step back and look at the totality of the evidence, when you consider all the moving pieces and how they fit together, it's hard not to wonder if Minnesota is quietly, methodically setting the stage for a Derek Carr acquisition that would shock the NFL world. The Vikings need a veteran quarterback who can compete for a Super Bowl immediately while potentially mentoring J.J. McCarthy for the future. Derek Carr needs a contender with elite weapons, strong defense, and realistic championship aspirations. Jordan Traylor mysteriously turns down a promotion to stay in Minnesota. The connections run deep throughout the organization. The price would be minimal. The fit makes perfect sense. Sometimes in the NFL, when you see smoke like this, there's usually fire burning somewhere nearby. This situation is developing rapidly, and the dominoes are starting to fall into place in fascinating ways. Keep your eyes on Minnesota over the coming weeks and months, because something big might be brewing in the Twin Cities. Derek Carr coming out of retirement to team up with Justin Jefferson and chase a Super Bowl with the Vikings would be one of the wildest storylines of the entire offseason, and based on everything we're seeing right now, it might just happen. What do you think? Is Derek Carr the answer for Minnesota? Would you rather have Carr or Kirk Cousins leading this team? How many games would the Vikings win with Derek Carr under center? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let's get this debate going. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the Vikings quarterback situation, smash that like button, hit subscribe to stay updated on all the latest NFL news and analysis, and turn on notifications so you never miss when we break down the biggest stories in football. This is just the beginning of what promises to be an absolutely wild offseason for the Minnesota Vikings, and you won't want to miss a single second of it.
Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 2,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now.